During Operation Alice 116 in Syria, Parker, a highly skilled CIA combatant and investigator, takes down the targets after a heated fight. As with many missions, a colleague loses his life, leaving Parker feeling remorseful. Suddenly, Adam, another team member, begins shooting the captured men, prompting Parker to rush at him. A fight breaks out between them, but their friend and colleague, Spider, intervenes before it escalates further. On the drive back, Parker vents her frustration to Spider about Adam taking out the assets,
How does he think we're going to get information from them if he keeps killing them all?
arguing that they can't gather intel if he keeps eliminating them. Spider then informs her that Adam has requested her transfer out of the unit, which shocks her. More curious about how Spider knows this, she accuses him of hacking Adam's email and warns him about the risk of getting caught. Just then, Parker receives a call from Jessie Swan, her ex-lover and the sheriff of her hometown, who sadly informs her that her father, Harry, has died in a mining accident.
Listen, there was a cave-in at the mine last night.
Back in her hometown, Parker visits Jessie, overwhelmed by the news, especially knowing how much her father loved the mine. Jessie hands her a letter found on Harry's desk, now logged as evidence. He suspects Harry may have taken his own life, but Parker strongly disagrees. While Harry missed her deeply, she doesn't believe he would ever do such a thing. Besides, old mines are prone to collapses. Jessie apologizes for the assumption and offers her a ride home.
Can I give you a ride home?
On the way, she wonders if Jessie's father, Ezekiel Swan, who is running for Senate re-election, might know people interested in buying her father's bar, Maria's. Though Harry built it for her, Parker has no intention of staying. She plans to leave after the funeral, as the town no longer feels like home without him. That evening, Parker breaks down in grief. Suddenly, a car pulls up outside. A hooded man enters the bar with a flashlight, searching for something. Parker quickly attacks him with a knife to his throat, demanding to know who he is. Terrified, he explains that he came to feed the lizard, and she realizes it's revealing Mikey, an old friend and worker at the bar. They embrace, and he tells her how proud Harry always was of her. When she asks where Harry was found, Mikey reveals he was the one who discovered the body.
I found him, actually.
Parker apologizes, knowing it must have been hard, and asks him to take her to the site.
Will you show me?
In the rain, Mikey leads her to the cave, where she notices a real security camera. Unlike the fake ones at the bar, Harry had clearly upgraded the system. As they enter, Mikey explains Harry had been spending a lot of time in the cave for reasons he didn't understand. Parker begins recalling childhood memories with her father, especially when he gave her a pocket knife in the cave. She gets lost in thought, staring at the symbols carved into the rock until Mikey brings her back to the moment. He shows her the spot where Harry was found and describes the scene. When she sees the blood-stained rocks, she's overwhelmed with sorrow. Inspecting further, she notices unusual pockmarks on a specific rock and asks Mikey if Harry ever talked about opening the tunnel more. Mikey has no idea, and they both head back to the house. He helps fix the power supply, and they head down the road. Parker starts reminiscing about walking this same path with Harry, memories that bring a rare smile to her face. When Mikey finds out she plans to sell the bar so she can return to work, he offers to run it for her, but Parker doesn't reply. Instead, she suddenly throws a grenade, startling Mikey. She believes the mine collapse was caused by a similar explosive and points out the matching pockmarks on the rock, just like the ones she saw in the cave. However, knowing Harry was a Green Beret and trained in handling explosives, she questions how such a mistake could have happened. Mikey suggests Harry may have forgotten he pulled the pin, admitting that Harry had been becoming increasingly forgetful. Later, they go to a local bar for drinks. Parker helps Mo, the bartender, and also gets a refill. She runs into Jesse's crude brother, Elvis, but ignores him. After leaving the bar, Parker spots a suspicious truck and pauses to examine it. As they head over to Mikey's truck, she asks him to wait, voicing her suspicions that the other truck might be stolen. Watching through the rearview mirror, she sees it pull away and tells Mikey to follow. keeping a safe distance so they don't raise suspicion. Mikey is hesitant, especially when she claims she saw a machine gun in the truck. When they reach a hardware store, Mikey finally sees the armed men enter. Parker tells him to call Jesse, then steps out and follows them inside. It turns out to be a robbery. She quickly intervenes, taking the robbers down one by one. She notices a watch on one of them and later returns it to Frank, an old friend of Harry's and its rightful owner. The next morning, after fixing Harry's truck, Parker hears a strange noise and goes to check it out, only to witness an explosion and a group of men cheering, with Elvis holding a military-grade weapon. Later, while going through Harry's belongings, she finds a note with the name Cirrus Securities scribbled on it. She calls Spider to ask about it. He explains that it's a small-time cloud storage provider often used by CCTV systems. She asks him to break into it, saying she found a link among Harry's things and suspects it might be connected to new cameras Harry installed. Spider agrees and uses the link she sent to hack into the storage. Parker tells him to search for footage from the day of the accident, though he warns that sorting through the unorganized videos will take time. Eventually, he finds a clip showing a monster truck, one Parker recognizes as Elvis's.
Elvis Swan, 2N.
She tells Spider about seeing Elvis with the weapon earlier, which raises questions about his presence in the mine. She reveals Harry had set up the cave like a full living room. Spider discovers that Elvis frequents the dark web, which surprises Parker. Apparently, he's selling military-grade weapons online. When Parker asks about grenades, Spider finds no listings. Parker vows to end Elvis if he's responsible for the cave-in, but Spider tells her to get proof before acting. He advises her to track him in the meantime and promises to call if he uncovers anything. Parker follows Elvis to the military depot and later pays a visit to Georgia, Mikey's mother, bringing up her suspicions about Elvis. Georgia reveals that Elvis is still the same entitled individual, selling drugs, getting drunk, and hanging out with his pals, Beck and Mickey. It turns out Elvis has gotten them jobs at the military depot.
Got them jobs at the Army Depot.
Later, Parker gets a call from Spider, informing her that an exchange is going down in Elvis's apartment in 2 hours. As expected, Parker drives to the residence while listening to Ezekiel on the radio talking about fixing America. How ironic. Once the cars go in, Parker sneaks into the compound and spies on a group of men testing machine guns. One of them begins firing in her direction, forcing her to run for cover. Sneaking in closer, Parker overhears the buyer asking Elvis for RPGs. He promises $500,000 if Elvis can get 5, and they shake on the deal. Later, Parker shares snacks with Jesse when Ezekiel spots them. He approaches and greets Parker. She returns the pleasantries and comments on his passion for the campaign, but he bluntly admits it's all about power. Before leaving, he invites her and Jesse over to his house for the weekend to catch up. That evening, Jesse reminisces about Harry, making Parker laugh. Turning serious, she tells Jesse she doesn't believe Harry took his own life. Jesse, however, says Harry hadn't been himself lately. Parker argues that forgetfulness wouldn't make Harry end his life, then changes the subject. She asks when the body will be released, and Jesse tells her it's the next day. He's already arranged for Harry's cremation so Parker can have a funeral. The cause of death is being ruled an accident, and Parker agrees. Jesse offers to help, but Parker simply continues drinking. Later that night, they end up in bed, but Parker can't sleep. She tries to wake Jesse but gets no response. Quietly, she goes through his things before sneaking out and riding a bike to the station. She slips into Jesse's office, finds Harry's file, and takes pictures of the documents. Then she visits Harry's body. Seeing him covered up overwhelms her, and she breaks down in grief beside him. The next day, the funeral goes on as planned, and Parker scatters Harry's ashes while crying. A small gathering is held afterward in the cave to honor him, but Parker remains consumed by sorrow. The following day, Parker visits Ezekiel as promised. He rambles about random topics until she gets a text from Spider informing her Elvis is at the mine. She excuses herself, calling it a work emergency.
Oh, it's a work emergency.
At the mine, she sneaks between parked cars and slashes their tires before going in. She finds Elvis and his crew lounging in the cave and immediately attacks him. Furious, she pins him down and demands to know if he did it, but Elvis only yells for help. As the others come to his aid, Parker holds a knife to his throat and forces everyone to back off. Outside, she beats Elvis again. He denies involvement in Harry's death, but Parker doesn't believe him. Elvis gets cocky, claiming his brother won't arrest him and implying that Jesse already knows she's there. Suddenly, an explosion goes off at Maria's and Parker runs toward it in a panic. She sees Mickey lighting up the place and begs him to stop, but he only flings an explosive toward her and continues his work. She tries to use the fire extinguisher, but Mickey stops her, leading to a scuffle. Breaking free, she rushes to her room and begins packing her important belongings. Undeterred, Mickey continues hurling explosives at her, and they begin fighting on the landing of the stairs. This results in him falling over the banister and into the raging fire below. Parker also falls, but manages to grab the railing and pull herself up to safety. Just as she leaps from one of the windows, the flames finally consume the building, destroying it completely. Beck and Elvis try to drive away, but soon realize they can't because of the flat tire. Seething with anger, Parker storms over to the car, gets in, pins Elvis with the seatbelt, and begins landing hard punches. Beck tries to stop her but catches a punch himself. Still focused on Elvis, she accuses him of taking Harry's life, insisting he admit Harry caught him smuggling guns through the tunnels. Jesse arrives just in time and pulls her out of the car. Now in the back of a police vehicle, Parker looks at the smoldering ruins in disbelief, heartbroken that Harry's hard work has gone up in flames. The next morning, Jesse questions Elvis about his dealings, but Elvis admits the money is too good to pass up. Enraged, Jesse punches him. Furious that he's selling stolen guns on the dark web and attracting dangerous people to town. Elvis claims it's a win since Jesse is sheriff and Ezekiel looks generous. He adds that if Jesse had kept Parker at the dinner, everything would have been fine. Ezekiel diffuses the tension between his sons and asks how much Parker knows. Elvis admits she knows too much, and Ezekiel instructs Jesse to clean up the mess. Left with no choice, Jesse visits Parker, who's now behind bars, and tells her Ezekiel found a buyer for the 5 acres around Maria's, offering her $3 million. When she doesn't respond, he raises it to $5 million and urges her to take the money and go back to her life. She finally turns and questions how involved he is. She asks if their relationship was just a distraction, but he denies it.
To be a distraction?
No.
She's furious that Jesse let her believe Harry took his own life, revealing there's footage of Elvis. She urges him to do the right thing by turning himself and the others in, but Jesse arrogantly claims the bar cameras are fake. She informs him the exterior cameras are real. When he demands to see them, she tells him her lawyer will review them first. Frustrated, Jesse storms off. Soon after, Luis, her lawyer from Spider, arrives and they begin discussing the case. Luis visits Jesse's office and inquires about Elvis's connection to Ezekiel, but Jesse remains vague. Luis then heads to the mine to investigate, but Jesse's sudden suspicious appearance interrupts him. Meanwhile, at the station, Elvis beats Parker while Ezekiel demands the tapes. She mocks his weak punches, provoking him to hit harder. He insists there's no footage and claims Harry was delusional, which earns him a kick to the groin from Parker. Infuriated, he hits her mercilessly. Jesse begs her to make it all stop by cooperating, but she retorts that he could end it himself. Ezekiel urges her to reveal what's on the tape in exchange for release, but she stubbornly refuses. Seeing they're getting nowhere with her, Ezekiel proposes a trade, the tape for the truth about Harry's demise. Parker eventually agrees and says she needs to call her friend to tell him where to send it. Jesse pulls Ezekiel aside, warning that telling Parker the truth will complicate things, but Ezekiel insists it's on her now. While they argue, Parker slyly works to remove the cuffs from her wrist. When they return, Ezekiel threatens her life if she tries anything, and she finally calls out the number. He pulls a gun on her just as Spider calls back. The phone is put on speaker, and Parker asks Spider for a favor, telling him she's with Senator Swan and being tortured by his sons. Ezekiel immediately fires, but Jesse knocks his hand away just in time, making the bullet miss. In the chaos, Parker frees herself and lunges at Elvis, then turns to Ezekiel. After a struggle, she grabs the gun and holds Ezekiel at gunpoint, ordering Jesse and Elvis into the cell. Once they're locked in, she drags Ezekiel out, but is stopped by another officer with a gun. Using the distraction, Ezekiel escapes while Parker pretends to surrender. At the last second, she strikes the officer with the butt of the gun, knocking him out. She searches for Ezekiel but doesn't find him. Injured and fading fast, she steals a Jeep and drives off. As her vision blurs from the beatings, she sees Harry in a vision, urging her to stay strong. A radio broadcast reports her as armed and dangerous, asking citizens to report sightings. Roberto, a local farmer on his tractor, sees the Jeep crash into a tree and rushes to help. Back at the station, Jesse struggles to unlock Parker's phone but finally gets in on the third try. He hears a voicemail from Spider saying he's coming to town to meet her. To prevent that, Jesse texts Spider as Parker, saying she's fine and will call later. Spider calls immediately, but Jesse declines and texts again, saying she can't talk right now. Meanwhile, Elvis and Beck barge into Mikey's house, demanding to know where Parker is. Without hesitation, Elvis strikes Mikey with the butt of his gun while Beck checks the rooms. Georgia grabs a gun and points it at Elvis but lowers it when he threatens to end Mikey. Beck notices blood near the basement door and calls Elvis over. Elvis calls out for Parker but hears nothing, then forces Mikey to take them downstairs. The basement is empty, just as Mikey claimed. They lower their weapons and Elvis warns Mikey to call if he sees Parker, threatening to burn the house down if he doesn't. Once they're gone, Mikey and Georgia return to the basement and open a hidden door behind the washing machine. Inside, Parker lies hooked to a drip. Georgia applies a cold press as Parker slowly regains consciousness. Still weak, she asks how she got there. Georgia tells her Roberto found her and brought her in. Mikey then asks what her deal with Elvis is. Parker opens up to Mikey and Georgia about Elvis smuggling guns through a tunnel connected to the military depot. She also reveals he's responsible for Harry's demise, leaving them both speechless. When she tries to stand up to go after Elvis, Georgia stops her, insisting she needs to regain her strength first. Meanwhile, Jesse and Elvis remove Luis's wrapped body from the car to bury him. Jesse mentions he's been researching the man Elvis has been selling to, but Elvis isn't in the mood to talk. Undeterred, Jesse reveals the buyer is on the domestic terrorist watch list and is the same man behind the server farm bombings that killed 37 people. He urges Elvis to stop selling on the dark web, but Elvis refuses. He admits the weapons were supposed to be delivered 2 days ago, and only God knows what will happen if they don't arrive soon. Days later, Parker wakes up in the basement and tries to get Mikey's attention. He tells her she's been out for 3 days and helps her to the restroom, despite her protests. She gets momentarily distracted by his impressive weed crop collection. At the mine, Elvis and Beck continue their operation, gaining access through the tunnels. Back home, Mikey researches the ghost, discovering he's the one buying the missiles. Parker tries calling the captain, but the secretary answers and says the captain is unavailable. Parker stresses the urgency of the situation, but the call is cut off. Mikey wonders if the missiles can be recovered after being sold, but Parker isn't sure. The FBI has been hunting Ghost for years to no avail. Mikey asks how weapons could go missing under the government's radar. Parker explains it's surprisingly easy, just a matter of shuffling inventories and tampering with the software, something she's done before. When Mikey asks what she does for the government, she dodges the question. Instead, she asks Georgia for painkillers and then for guns. Georgia doesn't have any but takes her to Mo, who does. Mo gives her the perfect gun, and she and Mikey then head to Frank's. He provides her with a box of weapons but expresses concern, saying he feels like he's betraying Harry by letting her go. Parker softly tells him he doesn't get a say in what she does. The best thing he can do is make sure she's prepared, and he agrees. She pulls out a sharp sword from the box and begins practicing her moves. Meanwhile, Ghost arrives at Ezekiel's house demanding his weapons. Ezekiel explains there's been a delay, but Ghost isn't having it. He informs them they've missed major deals because of it. He demands a refund and offers to renegotiate, but Ezekiel insists he'll get the weapons the next day. Jesse reminds Ezekiel that Elvis said it would take a few more days due to access issues, which only angers Ghost more. Trying to salvage the deal, Ezekiel follows Ghost outside and offers to include drones as compensation, but Ghost responds with a punch to the face. Ezekiel confesses they can't issue a refund since they already spent the money on his campaign. Ghost then demands to see where the weapons are. At that moment, Parker and Mikey arrive at the mine. Parker sees Elvis's truck and decides to go in. As she arms herself, she makes Mikey promise to drive off if things go wrong, and he hesitantly agrees. Parker enters the house smoothly, encountering no one. She hears the faint sound of a TV and follows it to a room where Beck sits. The moment he sees her, he lunges, but she's faster. She disarms him and forces him to give up Elvis's location before ending his life without hesitation. She then heads to see Ezekiel and demands to know what happened to Harry. Ezekiel tries to deflect, claiming they had nothing to do with his death and was solely trying to make her talk. But Parker doesn't believe a word of it. Politicians and lies, nothing new. She draws her sword, eager for the truth. Moments later, she steps out of the building with the blade resting on her shoulder. She climbs into Mikey's truck and they head for the mine. Mikey asks if she ended Ezekiel, but Parker just says she got him to talk. Apparently, Harry found out about the smuggling operation and tried to destroy the tunnel. Jesse shot him in the back, but as Harry was dying, he pulled the pin on a grenade, collapsing the tunnel. That's why Mikey found him buried in the rubble. Just then, Ghost's convoy arrives. Parker grabs her weapon and prepares to follow them. Mikey warns her it's too dangerous to face them alone. He offers to create a distraction, but she refuses. With no other option, Mikey pulls her into a hug and lets her go. Inside the burnt building, Parker finds Harry's picture on the ground, which brings tears to her eyes. She climbs to a vantage point, lining up a shot at Ghost's men. Another truck pulls in, and it turns out to be Spider. He asks the men about Parker, and they lie, referring to her as him. The moment they do, he realizes something is wrong. Trying to create distraction, Parker fires at one of the delivery trucks, causing it to explode. Chaos erupts, and a fight breaks out between Spider and the men. One of them charges Parker at her lookout point, but she takes him down and moves into the cave. Inside, she overhears Ghost fuming about the destroyed truck. He blames Elvis and demands he return to the depot to get replacements, even if it means taking weapons off list. Jesse warns it would expose them, but Ghost doesn't care. As soon as Ghost leaves, Parker takes out one of the guards and inspects the missiles in a crate. While moving through the cave, she hears Spider being beaten and tortured for answers, and she rushes in, breaking out a fight. Spider also joins, and together they eliminate the rest. Parker hands him a missile, and they agree to destroy the site before leaving. But as they move deeper, a shot rings out. Unfortunately, Parker is hit in the arm. They return fire, and Spider launches the missile. The blast sends Parker to the ground, the air thick with dust. She regains consciousness, ties off her bleeding arm, and starts calling for Spider. Before she can find him, another attacker ambushes her. A brutal fight follows, but she ends him with her sword. Still calling for Spider, she navigates the wreckage until Elvis emerges and opens fire. They fight brutally, but Parker gains the upper hand and stabs him through the stomach and then the neck, ending it for good. Just then, Mo, Frank, Georgia, and Mikey arrive to help, leaving her surprised. She tells them she's lost Spider and rushes to look for him, with the others following close behind. They finally find Spider trapped under some rocks and beams, and they instantly go to help him. Thankfully, he is still alive. Parker notices that Jesse has arrived, and they all urge her to go finish the job while Georgia takes care of Spider. The men follow Parker, and they eventually find the entrance leading into the depot. Putting their guns away, they hide behind containers, sneaking in to get a better view. Parker quickly comes up with a plan, telling the men to get everyone out of the tunnels before rushing out, faking a cry for help about being shot. 2 military personnel approach her and try to help, while Jesse lurks behind one of the containers. One of the soldiers leads her to sit, but she cries out, urging him to get medical attention. As soon as he leaves, Parker resumes searching for Jesse. Jesse notices some of the military officers have found the secret entrance to the tunnels and tries to follow them, but Parker stops him, starting a fight. He pushes her away and continues moving. Just as he's about to be seen, Parker intercepts him, and they begin fighting again. She demands to know why he betrayed Harry, who had treated him better than his own father. Left with no choice, Jesse pulls the pin from a grenade. She begs him to let her help, revealing that everyone in town already knows what he's done. She manages to get through to him, taking hold of the grenade as well. Jesse begins to cry at her gesture of help. He regrets not leaving the town like she did, admitting that it sucks people in. Then, he pushes her away and releases the grenade. Seconds later, it explodes, ending his life instantly, making Parker shout in disbelief and pain. Soon after, a security alert blares, instructing everyone to evacuate to safety. 4 weeks later, news about the disgraced Swan family airs as new developments take place. Meanwhile, Parker and Spider drive back to the city but stop for gas. Spider tells her that his intern found footage from the night Harry was murdered, but Parker firmly insists she doesn't want to see it. Instead, he tells her to open a different folder, revealing a video of her and Harry at her graduation, which makes her laugh. Mikey's call interrupts, and he asks about the color choices for Maria's renovations and mentions that some military men are asking for her in town. But Spider tells him to tell them to contact the CIA if they want to reach her. Mikey playfully teases them about being spies and informs Parker that he'll be throwing a party for the reopening. He asks if she'll come, and she promises she will before ending the call. Like a good friend, Spider asks if she's okay. Parker replies that she always is, and they drive off from the gas station, heading back to their